Hey everyone. So, what I'd like to do is focus solely on C sharp programming. And what we're going to do is create a text adventure game. This particular series is going to focus on object oriented programming principles. The next one will be about design patterns and so on. But all the little games that we build in our class touch on these, but this is just going to be purely to look at how code writing works. So, let's go ahead and start with a very basic interface. I'm going to turn off my gizmos here up in the right corner. And that way our immediate view isn't obstructed. We might have to turn it back on later so that we can get things, like if I hit W for my transform and I turn this off, we might need to know what exactly we're clicking on, but you could also look inside this hierarchy. So even though like the old school text adventure games that I used to see my cousins play when I was, 6, 7 years old, existed in a terminal, we're going to kind of create our own fake terminal. So I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go to UI, and I'm going to go to create a canvas. Or actually, let's just go ahead and click on image. This will also create a canvas for us. And I'm going to click in the center here, and I'm just going to make sure that I hold Alt, I click that it's centered here. And you can see up here it says Alt also sets the position, Shift sets the pivot and sets the position. The pivot being, if we select this image and I press W, it'll set the pivot. Let me hit F to focus on this, to the center of our object here. Now I can go in here and hit T to grab this transform. And you'll notice as I move this up, it adjusts the width. I can also just hit R and scale this up a little bit. Now this is going to represent, essentially, let's go ahead and change this from free aspect to 16 by 9, a black screen monitor. All right, next I'm going to create a folder just in our games folder here. And you could just make it anywhere. It doesn't have to be, it could just be in assets if you're using a clean project. And I'm just going to call this art. And I'm going to right click in here and I'm going to import a new asset. The asset I have is this computer screen. So I'm going to go ahead and hit import here. And I'll provide this asset to you as well. I'm going to change it from default to Sprite 2D UI. And I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And under the images section here, I'm going to go ahead and grab my computer and just drop it in to, let's see. Oh, we also need to make sure that we change it from multiple to single. And we hit apply. And that'll make the image a separate sprite object that we can use inside of our image canvas. So you can see here's our computer. Now I'm less concerned with the bottom of the computer and more about the screen. So I'm just going to scale that up and hit W and move that down. And this is essentially where we're going to create, and we'll bring in our own, we'll find some fonts online of a like computer text. All right, now we're going to keep this pretty simple. We're going to create, and things could change, but just a couple fields so that we could see, right? So I'm going to right click on my canvas here, go to UI, and let's create just a Text Mesh Pro image. And you can see that it sits below it. So I'm going to name this one title, and we'll place this at the top. And this is where you're going to just enter inside of here, my game title. And then what we can do is the same as before. We want to make sure it's centered, holding Alt and clicking, and then Control and clicking. And actually, I'm going to center it to the top. Actually, I want to center, I'm holding Shift, the pivot to the center there. And I'm going to hold Alt and I want to move it to the top. And just shift it down myself manually. And then I'm going to just space this out a little bit like this. And as I move this out, you'll see that it'll kind of snap it that way. The next thing I want to do is right click on my canvas, go to UI, and I just want to create a input field. So let's see, let's go ahead and click on input field here, and we're just going to place that here. And then next to our input field, let's go ahead, and I know this is this is not realistic because it's a classic monitor, but just because we need something to register, maybe we could do it with where we press enter. And actually, I think we could do it that way, where it'll take in if we press enter instead of having a button. But let's add a button anyway, just so you could learn how to use buttons. So I'm going to go to UI, add a Text Mesh Pro button. I'm going to place that right next to it. And also with this field here, if I select this input field, I really want to make this pretty large. And I think I'm just going to make my game pretty simple where, I don't know, so you don't have to spell a lot. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. Actually, what we'll do is I'll duplicate my title, and I'm going to place that below here, and make that roughly, we'll grab all of these three here. Let's see. This, we'll grab this title, this input field, and this button, and we'll just kind of like sort of, let's see. I guess that is pretty centered to our game, but our monitor is not centered. I think that's the problem. So let's shift this over because the art itself, it looks a lot better. And then for my game title, we'll have to experiment with different color, but let's see if we can go with an old classic, maybe bright green. And that little white spot is kind of the issue here. So let's shift that over just a little bit like that. And then it looks like, let's see. I'm not sure why the input field and the button moved, but here's our input field. Actually, our input field might need to be at the bottom, and then they would read at the top. We want to think about sort of good design here so that they'll read what they need to, and then they enter their input down at the bottom. Again, we could always move this stuff around, and then we're going to call this game text. Make sure to put game text in there. Yeah, we can go something like this. And then again, same thing as before. Just I'm going to press W and just shift these down a little bit. And we'll make our game text the same color, like a green. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rename this from games to text adventure. Text adventure controller. I'll make a script called text adventure controller. And then inside of here, I have my art, which really, I think it's just going to be that anyway. So I'll just leave it outside of an art folder. I'm going to create another folder and call this scripts. And then I'm going to right click inside of here, create a model behavior script called text adventure controller. I'm going to right click in here, create an empty game object. Name that text adventure controller, and I'm going to attach this script there. So we have the text adventure controller with the text adventure controller script. We have a monitor set up, and we've got some stuff going on. Let's just briefly, I'm going to pause the video. We're going to write some really basic code so we can access these, the button, the input field. And like I said, we'll probably end up just deleting the button where you press enter, and we'll just have like text on here that says press enter to submit your response or something. But yeah, so let me pause the video, and we'll take a look at the code. All right, so there's a couple of using directives that we need. We need access to, so I just hit Control D at the top here, using Unity Engine.ui. And then I'm going to duplicate this. TMP Pro, save that. And then we need to create some variables, which are references to these elements in the scene. So these are variables. Again, I'm assuming that this is like really basic coding, aka references to the UI elements. So let's make this one public. TMP, this is for TextMesh Pro. And what I'd like to save is underscore text. And I'm just going to name this output text. And save that. And now when I go back into my scene, and actually I'm going to double click this variable name here. Let's reload our scene. If I select my controller here, we have it called output text. We have an input field here. And then I think I have a game text. So let's name this output text here. And then I'm just going to grab output text and drop it inside of output text here. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this. And then I need a TMP underscore input field. And I'm just going to call this input field with a lowercase I. Save that. Copy this. And then this one is already called input field. So we can just grab input field and drop that in there. And then because the button is not part of TMP Pro, it's this UI edit, UI Udemy I think if I right click, I don't think there's a, let's see, UI. Oh, there is a TextMesh Pro button. So I'll just do that kind of button. I think maybe I did add the same one. Let's see. Yeah, I did do a TextMesh Pro button. Okay. But I think that might be the same, but let's see. Is there a TMP button? No, I just think it's button. And then we're going to call this submit button. And you probably guessed it. We go back inside of here. And just grab my button and push it in here. Now, we know that these methods, I've talked about this before, but if this is completely new to you, just understand that this is a function. These are variables, right? And each variable has a name and it has a type. So right now, this can store a reference to this TMP text. This one can store a reference to that input field and so on. So in the start method, what I'd like to do, and this method is given to us by Unity as sort of a gift, and so is this update one. And then we'll end this tutorial in a second. We're just going to use this start method here to spit out to the scene. This only runs once, some information inside of our game text area. So what I might do actually is I'll create one more string just to kind of represent like a string of letters. So public string. You'll be able to edit this in the view, edit in the inspector here. We're going to call this string current location. And we're going to make that equal to, we'll just write start room for now. And then I'm going to save this. And down in start, I'm going to feed that into this text area here. So I'm going to grab output text. Oops. Just output text here. Control C, and then I'm going to undo these. Output text dot text equals, and then I'm just going to take current location and just plug it in there. Now when I hit save and I press play, you can see it changed it to the text here, which is start room. Let me go ahead and move that just a little bit lower. Now, the next thing is what I can do is I could write like quotes, and then I can append to that start room, and I can just write, you are currently in colon space current location. So I'll save that and I'll press play. And it says, I didn't catch that. You are currently in. Save that. But you can see here, when we run that, it just takes you are currently in, and then it spits out current location. And then what we can do is update this current location variable every time we go to a new room. You are currently in start room. Anyway, I think that's a good start. That's a good start to the beginning of our project. Go ahead and hit Control S to save this. And then inside of the games folder here, let's go to Text Adventure, and let's just call this, I guess, TA for the scene. And then I'll hit Enter to save it. And then we have our Text Adventure scene. You can name it whatever you like. I tend to go into Unity version control and just check in the stuff so I have it in case my project crashes. And that's it for the project setup.